It's at the high end. I mean, they did not take into consideration any mitigation that was presented. I mean, they hit him hard. It's, ultimately a life sentence. This judge in a similar case, obviously not a famous person, which, was reported that probably worse facts, somebody got 8 years. So that, again, you're talking about a defendant with no criminal history, with enough philanthropy and positives in his life that you don't expect him to be at the higher end of the sentencing range. Well, he's the victim of the movement, and he's the victim of, a history of people coming out saying horrible things about him. I mean, his option obviously is to appeal the case. He'll appeal multiple rulings by the judge, the admissibility of the other witnesses, that being the victims that were non-charged, that really just come in to, in the prosecution's version to show a pattern of conduct, in the defense version just to muddy him up and make him look like a bad guy. But that's really one part of the appeal. The other part of the appeal could be that the sentence was overly harsh, considering, they're so close to the maximum allowed. Well, appeals, as we say, it's like the pyramid. You go up the court process, your chance of winning is less and less. So in general, for people, appeals are less likely than when they go to trial. So that, is small. The time frame, it is 6 months at the shortest version, but you're probably looking at a year to 2 years for everyone to do briefs and have oral argument and then get a decision. I mean, the Bureau of Prisons in most states have broad discretion on where they're going to house somebody. We learned in the last few weeks he had a stent put in. We know he's got other medical history that was filed under seal. Obviously, that doesn't appear that the judge took any of that into consideration when sentencing, because, like I said earlier, 23 years appears to be a life sentence for him. Well, again, a prisoner, a high-profile prisoner, and especially after what happened to Jeffrey Epstein, prisons don't want to see their high-profile people, get hurt or anything like that. So they're going to try to isolate them and keep them safe, which means he may be in a cell 23 hours a day, getting out 1 hour a day. He'd maybe get his meals in the cell versus with other inmates. It really depends upon the facility and their capabilities, how they feel they can both, house him in the best manner, but also, keep him safe, because they really don't want, his death, certainly at another inmate's hands, on their hands. I mean, generally, they are always powerful. Those are very emotional moments and times, because it really is a closure for any victim. In this case, some of the victims have already testified, so that was their really emotional outlet to a degree, but it's very different than just reading that statement. No one's going to cross-examine you. You just get to say your piece, and that really is kind of the end. Well, again, while he may have been right in some of the ways that times were different back then, this was not the time or venue to say that. I mean, honestly, that may have been something, if that's something he really felt that should have been discussed, and maybe that would have been a more appropriate argument for his attorneys to take, because that way he's not stuck to it. He could have just accepted responsibility for his actions and kept it more simple. By him saying that, it gave the judge an opportunity and the prosecutor to say he really hasn't accepted, he hasn't shown remorse, and that's a grounds to give him a higher sentence. I think LA will regroup. I think they're going to meet with their victims and their witnesses and then make that decision. If they feel they have a strong enough case, they've filed it now, they have victims who are willing and want to go forward, they may consider going forward. But again, the other side of it is these victims who really don't want to go through this probably, and if they tell the DA that, DA is not going to go forward if they have victims who say, you know what, we think that's enough, we're satisfied. I am surprised. I'm not shocked or anything like that, but like I said, due to the lack of forensics, lack of corroboration, really just being the women getting up and that their credibility was what the jury had to rely on, and they did. And clearly the jury did their job because on some counts they acquitted. They didn't rely on the women's story.